Hey Kyle, how are you doing?
Hey, to me, I'm doing great, thanks. How you doing?
I'm very well, thank you for asking. Yeah, probably could be better because yeah, the fact that I'm talking to you means something is going on. Although probably then I shouldn't just talk to you when something is wrong. That's unfair because then you'll be like the bad news guy.
Yeah, I don't want to be the bad news guy.
Yeah, I think we need to find topics, that aren't so bad news guy. But for now,
Yeah.
we'll jump straight into it. So Kyle and I are back, discussing, another funny that has just popped up. And yeah, calling it a funny is probably mild. It's like oh, something silly happened to me. I was mugged. But yeah. So Kyle, here we are again. We're talking about, another SharePoint vulnerability. In last time we covered spoofing, the spoofing. Oh, sorry, last month we covered the spoofing flaw, right? And now there's a new one, and I wrote it down because I could not memorize all these numbers. So here we go. Tell us what is the CVE 2026 45659 and why should
Oh,
people
well
I'll,
done.
I'll try it again. Listen properly. What is the CVE 2026 45659? And why should people care? What's the difference at this point? Are these things just popping up and are they just going to become background noise?
Yeah, no. Um, well, we definitely need to care about each and every one
Yeah, yeah.
of the issues that get picked up.
Mm.
Um, Basically, it's like every single one is a new hole being poked in your bucket. And eventually somebody's going to use those holes to get in and take control of your environment. So, that's why we've always got to talk about them, make sure that we patch those holes. Um, so this new CVE, uh, it is a flaw within the way that all Microsoft SharePoint on-premise servers deal with .NET deserialization. So I know it's a lot of big words, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's basically how it accepts certain information and then deconstructs it into a way or into objects that it can deal with. Um, and yeah, somebody's found a way to break that sort of logic and allow themselves to run things as the SharePoint service account. So
Mm.
definitely something to be concerned about.
Gotcha. And so, okay, last time we spoke about the spoofing vulnerability, sorry. And this one is referred to as a remote code execution flaw, right? So for people watching like me, who's almost biting her tongue saying these things, what is the difference? Why is RCE considered more dangerous than maybe a spoofing vulnerability?
So a spoofing vulnerability will allow for certain things. Basically, what spoofing is you're pretending to be someone else.
Mm,
So an example of that is you might be able to send a request for a payment, and you are pretending to be someone from accounts, from the finance department. And that's sort of a type of spoofing. And what people usually do is they use the spoofing to either commit some type of fraud or to do
mm,
social engineering where they'll try and get actual real credentials so that they can have more access using somebody else's credentials to log into the environment. Um, with this one, it's a much more direct approach.
Mm.
No one else has to be involved at all. It's literally you sending code remotely to the SharePoint server, and you're making the SharePoint server execute that code. So that's why it's extremely dangerous, because it's just like um, the things that can be done is so much more. You
Yeah,
actually make changes and have control over the environment if it's bad enough.
sure. Okay. Okay. So Microsoft describes this as I wrote this one again down, deserialization of untrusted data vulnerability. Uh, is it correct? Deserialization, ne?
Yeah.
Um, so apparently people have seen this term come up, and I say apparently because I don't deal with this on a daily basis, but apparently this is a term that has come up in previous SharePoint CVEs as well. Can you just elaborate or explain what deserialization actually means and why it keeps being the root cause?
Yeah, sure. So I briefly touched on it earlier. Deserialization, it's part of a two-step process. So
Mm,
when you are making requests to a server, um, using an API. So not necessarily while you logged into your SharePoint and clicking around, but it has these backend APIs that accept requests for the server to do something with it. Uh, and those requests will usually be serialized. So it's not just plain text that anyone can read. It's sort
mm,
of made into like computer talk and compressed a bit, and there's some sort of things that's done there. So that's yeah, your request is serialized before it gets sent to SharePoint. Now the vulnerability shows up in the second step there. So once SharePoint receives the request, it needs to deserialize. So like put it back into separate bits and pieces
mm.
of that request that the server understands. And there's a flaw within the sort of .NET framework that SharePoint uses on its back end. So it's the data is basically untrusted, and they haven't been enough security measures put in to prevent the server from doing anything that it shouldn't be doing with that deserialization of the objects.
Okay. All right. So w- when does the attack happen? Does it happen when, as SharePoint is breaking it up into bits and pieces and then discovers, what's really inside? Uh,
That's exactly it. So there's
oh,
part of that process of deserialization is there's code that runs through your request, because the whole point of that request is that you're asking SharePoint for something, right? You might be asking it for data from a list, and
mm,
SharePoint has to break that request up into pieces and say, okay, I need to go and check that list for something, or I might need to go and check a service or something, or I might need to go connect to AD and check that yeah, somebody's credentials are part of a group. It's got all of this functionality that sits behind that deserialization process. And basically, they found a way to craft the serialization in such a way that when SharePoint is busy unpackaging it,
mm.
it's basically forcing the server to run some code that it's not supposed to run.
Gotcha. So I'm going to try and explain this the way that I'm understanding it. And if I
Okay.
get it right, girl. Okay. So someone, brings you something from their home. So they say, oh, I've got a box of stuff that I want to give to you. Maybe I've got some old books or whatever that I've been keeping in my home. And then you get the box of books, right? And then you open it. And what you don't know is that there is a small colony of cockroaches. And so all the cockroaches, not all of them, but some of them and some you don't see, they run out into your home. And you who didn't have cockroaches before, unknowingly kind of opened for this colony to now start. And before you know it, you've got an infestation. So the box looked normal, and then until you opened it, and then they started to creep through the cracks or whatever, and now they've settled in your home. Would
That
that
is
be?
a very interesting way of looking at it. A lot more uncontrolled. Um, but yes, effectively, if they wanted, they're sending something through that you don't know about, and it's having an effect on your environment that it shouldn't. So yeah, that works.
Look at me talking tech. Okay. So what makes this particular vulnerability especially concerning? Is it the low barrier to entry? An attacker only needs like the basic site member permissions. How easy is it for someone to get that level of access as well? I think this is probably a twofold question. So what makes it especially concerning, and how easy is it for someone to get that level of access?
So that's a great question. It's not something. I'll start off with how easy is it to get. Uh, so it's not something you can really just get. This is more of an opportunistic
Mm,
exploit. So you either already have it or you don't. Um, but the thing is, it is something that is sort of a default permission. When you're giving users access to your different site collections, um, site member is the default. There's a bunch of others that you can have,
mm,
but it's sort of a midway point between having read-only access and full admin access. And it's basically like, well, if you've got site member permissions or more, so like 50% of the permissions you could possibly have on SharePoint, then you now have the ability to do this exploit unless you've already secured your environment. I
oh,
mean, that's kind of why it's so concerning. It's because it's a default permission that
yeah.
everyone in your organization is likely going to have that or more, unless you've got a very highly structured environment, um, and you've got certain people that only have read access into SharePoint.
Mm,
Uh, but yeah, it's not such a likely scenario from what we've seen. So that's what makes it so
understood.
concerning. There's such a wide um, entry point.
Hmm. Are you saying, because you mentioned that that this is at now an easy access or basic permission level, so are the attacks then people in the organization being opportunistic, or is it people in the organization with basic access being vulnerable entry points? So it's not necessarily them performing the attacks, but they are entry points for other malicious, I don't know, software or people or whatever is attacking.
Um, that's a very good question. So it can be both. Obviously, the people within your organization who have direct access, they are sometimes it happens that someone sneakily is a bit of a hacker and nobody else knows about it, and then they decide to take advantage or do something malicious. Usually disgruntled employees who are leaving um, are most likely to, cause some sort of trouble on their way out. Um, but you also get instances where, there might be social engineering involved. Uh, Someone externally might tell someone, oh, they just need to run this command for them, and
Mm.
then that person who has the access goes and runs the command, um, and it's injecting some malicious payload across, getting the SharePoint server to run some dodgy service, and then attack exploited. And it wasn't necessarily that person's uh, choice
Yeah.
to do and exploit the attack, but yeah, the first most likely case is going to be people internally in the company, and of course you get the uh, rare occasion where someone might have got an infection on their local machine,
Mm.
and now someone's got access to the local machine, and then they use that person's account uh, to do this exploit because that person's account has the access needed.
Sure. Okay. Um, so in the last year or so, there has been uh quite a number of CVEs. I think you also mentioned it that in the past, it's not like a first. There's nothing new under the sun type of thing. So some that I wrote down, there's been CVE 2025-53670. Yeah, have you watched Lilo and Stitch? Um,
Yeah.
what is his name? 262. Like it just reminds me of that. Like, are there no other names like Stitch and stuff? But anyway, I digress. So there's been CVE 2025 53770, CVE 2026 20963, then CVE 2026 32201. And now there's this one whose number I already forgot. Is SharePoint just fundamentally hard to secure, or is there something else going on? This just seems like a lot of CVEs in a small window. Is this just normal?
Yeah, so I think it is normal for software of this size, considering the landscape of cybersecurity at the moment. We've
Yeah.
had this huge boom of big AI models that have this incredible understanding into how um, code is working fundamentally. And it's able to like chain together all of these very minor mistakes that have been made in the code to realize that,
Mm,
okay, there's actually this bug that can be exploited. Um, I mean, we're seeing it all over. It's not just SharePoint that's having it.
yeah.
And the larger the platform, um, the more features you have means the more code you have that actually makes those features happen.
Mm.
And that's just the nature of things. The bigger the code base, the more opportunities there are for possible small mistakes.
Okay. Because that was going to be my next question. But you did mention it that it's not just SharePoint. Because I didn't want it to seem to anybody watching that, oh no, this is just a SharePoint problem. SharePoint's got problems. Let's go, you know, check out something else. But that it's all over, whether it's SharePoint or another similar platform.
Yeah, not just SharePoint.
Okay. And so, Microsoft has stated that this particular CVE isn't, or rather is less likely to be exploited. Um, should we then relax, or is that a dangerous assumption?
Personally, I feel like it's a dangerous assumption.
Mm,
Um, sure, I think because it's internal only, there is some comfort that the attack surface is smaller than it would be um, if the attack could just be done by anybody in the world, you
mm,
know. Obviously you have a lot more trust in your employees than people you don't know.
fair.
But I mean, this is SharePoint. It's a collaboration platform, and you don't just have your employees on your SharePoint environment. Sometimes you have external parties that you've created an account on your AD, and you have maybe an auditor, someone who has to collaborate within your SharePoint environment with your current staff. And so, yeah, at the end of the day, I wouldn't say just forget about it. Definitely not. It might be slightly less likely to be exploited,
Mm,
um, but any hole is a hole. Any hole is an
fair.
opportunity to gain access and break things, possibly leak data, cause some form of damage. And I'm not the type of person who likes to take those risks.
Yeah. Okay. Here comes me with my layman term explanations. So when you say any hole is a possibility, it's like when you have a tiny little, like, a rock makes a bump on your windscreen. It could, stay as that tiny little crack, or it could slowly start spreading across your windscreen.
Um,
Not exactly.
yeah, I mean, it's more like think of it as think back to the time where we all had to wear masks,
Yeah.
you know. Some people wore the most craziest things on their faces with, barely any protection. And then they had higher chances of getting infected by airborne things because there was lots of holes. And
Mm,
the less holes you have, sure, it might have been a little bit harder to breathe, but you were safer. There was less chance of picking up something through the air. I really didn't want to
gotcha.
say the name of the thing because I know that's like
PTSD.
that's a PTSD word for a lot of people.
No, but I get you, and I think everybody else will get you. All right, I get that. Actually, that clears it up for me. I think I was going off on a weird tangent, but that actually makes more sense to me. So, in this case, then you'd be wearing, a cloth mask versus a medical grade uh mask, I guess, in that case. Um, okay, so who actually needs to worry here? I mean, which versions are affected, and are SharePoint Online customers safe from this one?
Uh, Basically, yes, SharePoint Online customers are safe. Everybody who has SharePoint on-premise, which means every single version of SharePoint, going back, I, th- I think it even includes SharePoint 2013.
Mm,
But yeah, 2013, 2016, 2019, and SharePoint Subscription Edition. It affects all of them.
okay. All right. I'm sensing a theme, but I'll get to it. For an IT admin or just anyone, actually, let's not box the viewer, but anybody who's watching this who runs SharePoint on premises, what should they do first thing? After watching this video, what is the first step?
Um, First step, definitely make sure that your SharePoint environment has had the latest security updates. I believe this particular issue has already been patched as of the, it was released on the 21st of May.
Mm.
So first thing you need to do, if you haven't done updates in a while, you need to run these security updates on your SharePoint environment.
Okay. All right. And then
I
from
would
there,
even
uh-huh.
suggest setting up monitoring within the SharePoint logs. You basically want to be looking for anything that talks to deserialization. Um, and you want to monitor the processes that run on your SharePoint servers. If you start seeing strange processes running as the SharePoint service account, whatever
Mm.
account you're using as your SharePoint service account, if it's running processes that it shouldn't be, that is a likely sign that you've already been um, a victim of the bug.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. So I guess everybody just has to kind of bite the bullet and check what's going on in their environment, and deal with things before they fester, I guess. And obviously, I said I sense a theme, so we keep coming back to the issues being on SharePoint, on-prem, so SharePoint 20, sorry, yeah, the 2016, 2019, the older versions, of SharePoint. Is it older versions? It's older versions, ne? Or
All
on-premises version?
versions, even the
Yes.
most recent SharePoint version or SharePoint on-premise version.
Okay, so it's on-prem
Yeah.
versions. Okay. Um, with the end of support deadline, coming up, which is the 14th of July, where I'm guessing really you're on your own after that point. How much longer can organizations realistically keep running it in that case? I mean, if you're running, you mentioned 2013, if you're running 2013, 2016, 2019, um, how realistic is it to keep, running it at this point?
Look, I understand there are a lot of industries that use SharePoint. There are some industries where the SharePoint, the way they're using SharePoint is very business critical.
Mm,
And some of those industries, they're very scared of having any downtime. Downtime is bad, and therefore they just say, some people just have the attitude of, oh, my environment's running, and therefore it's fine,
mm,
and they don't go and update to later versions. Um, you can only really get away with that for so long. Because as we've seen now is Microsoft have released updates for 2016 and 2019. But for everyone running on SharePoint 2013,
mm.
there's no patch for for this vulnerability. So, I mean, realistically, if you're on 2019, you'll probably be okay for another year. But I recommend if you're on anything older than 2019, you start looking to move to subscription edition as soon as possible.
Gotcha. And so I guess then, what is the one takeaway that you want everybody to kind of walk away with, looking at this new, yeah, the latest? What is one takeaway that people should walk away with?
Um, I think monitoring your environment is very important. Um, so if you know what's supposed to be running and you start seeing things that shouldn't, even if you don't know anything about this bug, um, you will be able to pick up as soon as something's wrong, as soon as somebody's trying to exploit your environment.
Mm.
But yeah, it's just the same thing I always say. Make sure that you keep up to date with your patching. Um, and I think something that people should be thinking about more is the zero trust model.
Mm.
Um, you should only ever be granted the rights to access exactly what you need to access. I mean, we're talking about a perfect world here, right? But
Yeah.
as a rule of thumb, you should generally only get access to what you need access to. And you shouldn't be giving like all the service accounts like full access to absolutely everything. Um, I try and make them domain admins. Um, yeah, just be careful, make sure your patch and think about permissions. Make sure you're not granting more permissions than you need to.
Gotcha. All right. So, a lot of organizations are probably alarmed about, all of these issues popping up and trying to see, how can I get myself in a better position? Um, so just to wrap it up, I guess, what can people do to make sure that they are, wearing the medical grade mask and not the mask with an orange and a sack that's that orange sack, how can people ensure that they've got themselves in the best position to prevent this kind of thing? Well, not prevent, but guard against as much as possible.
Yeah, there's a few ways to go about it. You can always make sure that you checking on Microsoft's website for the latest vulnerabilities and patch notes. So make sure you're always up to date. But some people don't have a full IT team, or maybe not SharePoint specialists or
Mm.
security specialists. And you can always come to GT. We do security assessments. Um, we know SharePoint back to front, and we've definitely got someone who can help you out.
Awesome. I think you said it all. Just when I was about to say, Kyle, how can you help? Or what do you, what can you to help the people of the world? But thank you so much. I think you did answer my questions. So yeah, if you want Kyle, to help you out in kind of tightening up, locking in, assessing, checking how secure it is, he's your guy. So yeah, I think thank you so much, Kyle. Yeah, I think if we keep having these conversations, I will be in a better position to know about my security, cyber security than I was, before. I think I'm in a better position now. I mean, I'm able to kind of figure it out and simplify it. So it's that.
Yeah,
But it's still difficult. So yeah, if I was in other people's position, I'd definitely reach out to you. But thank you
glad
so
to
much,
know.
Kyle, for the conversation. And
Thanks for
yeah.
having me.
I guess we'll chat soon because now this is becoming a common occurrence.
Yeah, I think we'll be chatting more.
All right, bye.
Bye.